Sports professor Rick Horrow, Beyond the Scoreboard, the show that goes beyond the trillion-dollar business of sports, legal, marketing, administrative, deal-making, law, all of the stuff you don't see on the field or on the golf course. It all is there because that's what makes the business, the backbone of it. We have a lot of stuff going on today. But first, if you want to see the top issues, look at NBC Washington, look at Horrow Sports Ventures, our 15 to watch, 5 tech, 5 power issues of the week. If you want to get more behind them, take a look at that on the on the services. Also, subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Audio Boom, Stitcher, iTunes. Look for us everywhere as we cover some of the biggest issues in sports. Getting ready for the World Cup. We'll talk soccer today. Amazing NBA and NHL finals, even though Washington's not in the NBA one, but boy, is it the NHL one. We'll lead off with that. We also have some golf stuff with one of the biggest volunteer organizations in the history of the world, Volunteers of America, and we'll tell you how they fit into golf as well with their CEO, Mike King. And we have soccer, and more soccer. Before we start with that, how can we go beyond an amazing, incredible NHL year? NBC Sports Game 1, the average of 5.2 million viewers, the most watched Game 1 in 3 years. Probably more than that. And by the way, the Vegas Knights single-handedly are causing the salary cap, not single-handedly, but mostly, up to from $78 to $82 million or so. Not decided. It's up at least to $3 million from the $75 million of last year, depending on whether the players and the league decide to enact an inflator or not. Salary cap goes up anyway. Average of $2 million a year over each of the last 3 summers, the increase. The revenue remaining mostly flat, but league-wide revenue approaching $5 billion per season, and the success of not just the Golden Knights, also the 31st team in general has helped. There's a lot of revenue certainly generated by the Vegas franchise on their jersey sales and licensed merchandise. It's off the charts. Well, yeah, but how about off the charts in D.C. as well? The Stanley Cup playoffs this year remain the most watched in 21 years. They're on track to be the highest revenue series of the current era as well. And obviously, we'll see if the Knights can bounce back from a 2-1 deficit against the Caps. This is a watershed week for Washington sports, to be sure. You can't talk NHL playoffs without talking NBA playoffs as a companion. Though there is no Washington team in it, the ratings are even better, just as good. The most watched contests were the Game 7 matchup on the East side, 9 million viewers, and the Warriors-Rockets on the other side, nearly 15 million. The second highest figure for an NBA game in cable TV history. Klay Thompson, Kevin Durant, Steph Curry, obviously big deal, and LeBron, more LeBron. All the networks averaged about 4.6 million for the 77 telecasts, just short of 4.9 million 6 years ago. And by the way, the NBA playoffs, which is a big deal of what networks think, have won the night on cable TV nearly 92% of the time. 34 of 37 nights. So the big deal is the NBA and NHL had 8 incredible, separate, independent stories in the 4 conference finals, and now the 2 finals of both have 4 incredible stories. What's the result? Revenue, and more revenue. Before we go to golf, let's not forget the French Open. It's on TV this week. It's the second major of the year. Australian Financial was told that the tech giant will show the 3-day international team tennis tournament on its Prime Video. What? Amazon. What deal? The Laver Cup. And the bottom line is plans for associated content behind the scenes and a related mini-series will reportedly also be included. Laver Cup, launched last year, is named after Australian tennis icon Rod Laver, owned and operated by Team 8, the management company set up by Roger Federer and his longtime agent Tony Godsick, in conjunction with Tennis Australia and the USTA. It's a format reminiscent of golf's Ryder Cup. The competition pits Team World against Team Europe, who were captained last year by John McEnroe and Bjorn Borg, respectively. Last year, Laver Cup was successfully conceptualized. This year, it's due to be held in Chicago in September. And news of the latest deal comes as Amazon continues to expand its portfolio of tennis broadcast rights. Last year, it outbid Sky Sports for rights to the ATP World Tour in the UK, while it also won rights to the U.S. Open in that market for the next 5 years. Tennis is pretty good and looks even better. Take a look at golf. And the bottom line, by the way, is that more and more events ready for the U.S. Open. Detroit officially announced as a host of a new PGA event beginning in June. Quicken Loans, the title sponsor for the event, helped deliver the news, making the Michigan City a PGA Tour event for the first time ever. Detroit Golf Club expected to host the new event, which will replace the National on the PGA Tour schedule. Quicken Loans, the National's title sponsor from 14 to 17, meaning the Detroit-based company will be able to leverage its extensive presence across its hometown to promote the event. Quicken Loans officials already said they're planning for a multi-week event, complete with concerts and other attractions, with the golf tournament as the centerpiece. The Buick Open, hosted in Grand Blanc back in 2009, was the most recent PGA Tour event held in the state of Michigan, so this news comes as a huge positive for rebuilding the city and the state concerning golf. Golf. Well, the U.S. Open prepares to tee off at Shinnecock. Tag Marshall, the golf course intelligence and pace of play system, operational at Pinehurst. A 15 to 17-minute decrease for each round and increased maintenance efficiency. Recent system installments across the country have led to 70% of rounds being played on a pace or within 5 minutes of target goal times. Top-ranked courses trusting Tag Marshall, Carnoustie, the Ocean Course at Kiowa, Whistling Straits. The amount of time it takes to play a round is one of the sport's major deterrents, so any innovation that leads to quicker play will only benefit the industry as a whole. We're going to be talking a lot about golf, not just because I like it, clearly, but it is a key between the ability to generate dollars and the ability to generate volunteerism and philanthropy. Golf, $4 billion in charity, raising more than any other sport. That's important. But one of the most important issues, to flip it on its head, is there is now an event in Texas called the LPGA Texas Classic that is sponsored by Volunteers of America. One of the first times a volunteer organization has actually sponsored an event. Mike King, National President and CEO, the oldest and largest human service charity in the U.S., one of the oldest, 15,000 employees, housing portfolios, 25,000 units, deals with HSBC, Niagara Bottling, Capital One, and others. Mr. King, an innovator in the sponsorship industry, in the corporate partnership industry, in the ROI industry. And as we get into a huge week dominated by golf, who better than Mike King describing what the philanthropy is all about? Rick Horrow, Beyond the Scoreboard, Inside the Boardroom. It is a $1 trillion business of sports, and in many ways, philanthropy and charity are carrying the day. The numbers that we have say that 5 years ago, about 7% of that humongous pie was dedicated to the broad notion of philanthropy. Today, it's about 12%. More people are investing more money because it's the right thing to do, and more people understand the metrics as it relates to corporate America, clearly the right thing to do. We are here at the Volunteers of America LPGA Texas Classic, the Old American Golf Course in the Colony, Texas. Mike King, who is the CEO and president of Volunteers of America, thank you for being here, and what an incredibly prolific organization. Honored to be here. Tell us about the organization.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Well, we are fortunate. We are fortunate as an organization that we've been around 122 years. Since 1896. We have been serving America's most vulnerable all all of that time. We have about 15,000 employees nationwide. We're in about 400 communities nationwide. We serve about 1.3 million people nationwide, and truly in hardcore human service areas. We are the largest owner and operator of affordable housing in America, and that's primarily affordable housing for low-income seniors as well as disabled. We are one of the oldest organizations that have been serving America's veterans. The first veterans that we served in America were veterans of the Civil War, and so we've been dealing with PTSD long before they knew what it was, and even into now an area called moral injury that is probably the underlying cause of most veteran suicides that we hear about. In addition to that, we are one of the leading folks serving in alcohol and drug addiction, as well as our founder began the programming called prisoner reentry programming, or halfway houses, for folks coming out of incarceration and then getting reconnected with their families and jobs and all of that to be back functioning in normal life.
And with all due respect, and it's maybe because I'm not as well read as most people are, Volunteers of America is not on the tip of everybody's tongue.
That's right.
Although it should be, to be honest about it. It should be. So how does golf and their $4 billion philanthropic bent and this tournament, for example, specifically help?
Yeah, thank you very much for asking that question. Yes, we have been far too humble for those 122 years, and thanks to our work with the Richards Group, we've been trying to sort of undo that, if you will, for the last 5 years to get our name out and literally brand the organization. And our involvement with the LPGA was an effort in that regard. We started as just a small, tiny little sponsor. The first year this tournament was in Texas, and after a couple of years, we're approached by Mike Wan to see if we'd like to be the title sponsor, and a little bit of a nonprofit discount rate, if you will, that'll stay between us. And it's been the best thing that ever happened to us, because now suddenly when I'm on airplanes, which I'm on a lot, the folks sitting next to me have heard of us. Every golf fan has heard of us, and it's been an amazing payback to us.
And from a business perspective, business show, business outlet, you have 32 regional affiliates around the country, and I'm sure though the venue of this tournament is in North Dallas, this helps nationally as well.
It absolutely does, because many of those affiliates also do local golf tournaments as fundraisers. Yeah. It's a common fundraiser, so the connection with the LPGA Tour has a direct benefit back to those tournaments.
So tell us about your corporate partnerships. The incredible thing is that you've had $11 million of building or improving housing for homeless veterans, and a lot of that program is a partnership with Home Depot. Tell us about it.
That's right. The Home Depot Foundation came to us about 5 years ago and said to us they were going to start a brand new initiative to increasing veterans housing in America, and wanted us to be one of the central agencies that they would route funds through to do this. And we were fortunate. We were blessed. We're very appreciative of what they've done. It's a natural fit and partnership with them, and it means that more veterans have places to live, literally places to live, and places to recover as they start that transition. But those are similar to also ones that we have with Niagara Bottling, similar kind of relationship. HSBC was really the first corporation to fund our work in moral injury, in serving veterans. Without those corporate partnerships, we couldn't be effective.
You make the primary sale with your corporate partners, and you're sitting in a boardroom, and they understand the moral imperative of all this. Is there a metric analysis that brings them over the top? Is it doing the right thing? Is there some ROI nexus? How do you close the deal?
Well, frankly, there are metrics like that for the ROI that if you take a veteran, let's say, that is homeless or maybe has had an addiction issue, and you get them into recovery and into treatment, and they become an employed citizen and paying taxes, there's an absolute financial ROI, and so we can demonstrate that, and it's helped us a great deal.
Let's talk about taxes. So you are clearly a champion of philanthropic giving. You've appeared before the House Ways and Means Committee. You've championed the testimony about making sure that the charitable deductions in all forms are not eliminated. Are we at risk?
You know what? None of us really know what's going to happen until that next return is filed. Yeah. Absolutely, there's that situation with the larger tax deduction coming from the government. It means that It'll be tougher to take that tax deduction for charity because you've got to be doing the long form, and that means many, many more deductions there. We don't know yet how that's going to impact us at the end of the year. We'll know in December. We will absolutely know in December. We appreciate the fact that they left us in there, that they didn't eliminate it, and so we considered that a victory, and that they left some other things in there, like low-income housing tax credits that finances most of the affordable housing in America. So we are appreciative of that.
What's it like teetering on the edge?
Well, I can tell you we live it every day, every single day. And so the things that I look at immediately are these little bulletins I get from the Washington Post, that literally come in, hit this just hit, that just hit, because it literally does change day to day, as you know.
But it's a bigger issue than that, obviously. And without getting too political, this is not an issue that can be resolved in one tweet versus another.
No.
You have stability, bonding, financing commitments that people make for people who build infrastructure like you, and they have to sustain over time.
That's right. And you need to hear a good story coming out of Washington every now and then, and I have to share that we had our national board meeting and convening in Washington with a fly-in with a major briefing on the opioid crisis, and literally 2 weeks later the bill passed. Funding that, again, that's a perfect example of funding recovery instead of just dealing with the damage done. And so thank you to Congress for doing that, and to all the folks that listen to us.
You're a world-class academic. Get this title, the RGK Center for Philanthropy and Community Service at the LBJ School of Public Policy. That's a mouthful, but we're not done. He taught a course called Innovations and Trends in the Nonprofit Sector, taught it 5 years ago. What are the latest trends in the nonprofit sector relative to corporate philanthropy?
One of the biggest trends would be social impact ventures, and literally getting folks to invest in that is one of the major trends. And then also really looking at being more conscious of your marketing among nonprofits, because it, as is any other business, it's a competitive world, and folks have a lot of choices, especially on the internet. So more conscious of marketing as well as social impact investing, two major trends.
Is it easier today to raise corporate dollars because people are more creative, or is it harder because corporations are getting more selective?
Oh, that's a great question. I'm going to go to the positive side. I think it is easier in a way, because I think there's a higher consciousness level among everyone, and I see American corporations doing everything they can to give back. And again, as we had stated in an earlier interview, to really do it to service their own employees. That everybody lives someplace, and they really do stay grounded to that.
What more can sports do to enhance corporate philanthropy? And basically, what is the power of sports?
Yeah. It has an amazing power, because sports brings people together from all kinds of disciplines. It's not just from one area. And as you bring all those people together, you have the chance to form relationships. And it's around those new relationships that you can form that suddenly creates new opportunities. New opportunities for philanthropy, for private ventures, you name it. And so that's what sports does. It's a gathering place.
Mike, if I'm closing a philanthropic deal and I want passion and I want commitment, I want intensity, I want Mike King. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Rick Horrow, be back in a minute.
Well, Mike King has some real issues as far as expanding his reach. His ROI, what corporations do and spend, is really significant. And remember, he's also a guy who testifies frequently on the negative effects of capping charitable income tax deductions and what they would have on human service providers and the people they serve. So golf and the rest of the country watches anxiously as Congress evaluates these tax exemptions for charity. Mike King, certainly a great promoter, great entrepreneur, and great philanthropist as we head into the core and the crux of the golf season. Let's talk baseball. We're pretty darn close to the All-Star festivities in Washington. We will be covering that extensively. But in the meantime, we have a couple of very important philanthropic issues which go way beyond traditional philanthropy. Minor League Baseball pioneered with EverFi to bring a summer learning course to rising fifth-grade students in key markets. The digital course, called Summer Slugger, teaches student literacy and math skills through the game of baseball. Multiple minor league clubs participating in the pilot, which will reach thousands of students, including the Vegas 51s, the Richmond Flying Squirrels, the Charlotte Knights, the Lexington Legends, and the Charleston River Dogs. The Omaha Storm Chasers as well. Let's not forget them. On May 22nd, the Chasers hosted a program launch at the Gateway Elementary School with 240 students. The Vegas 51s also launched an event on May 10 at the Eva G. Simmons Elementary School with 270 students. Minor League Baseball's always been known for its innovation, creativity, and family-friendly atmosphere. The deal with EverFi takes that mindset from the ballpark to the classroom, aided by an equally creative, innovative partner. Speaking of philanthropy, and maybe the best who's ever done it, Cal Ripken's playing career best remembered for being baseball's Iron Man, but never missing a game for 17 years. His career after baseball been built on furthering a love for the game. Last week, Ripken, along with hundreds of students, faculty, and alumni, gathered at Oklahoma City's newly renovated Southeast High School sports complex for its grand unveiling. A partnership with Fields and Futures, backed by Group 1001, the Cal Ripken Senior Foundation, and Oklahoma City Public School Athletics, the new field and electronic scoreboard for baseball and softball were unveiled to the public. "This is big league," Ripken said. "The same caliber of field that would have gotten you to go out there and play on, and if you're in the majors, you really get excited about the field you're playing on and basically do really good things all around." Southeast becomes the 22nd athletic field to be renovated and became the first to feature a synthetic turf infield. Ripken said it was important to him and his family foundation to partner with Fields and Futures because of its modern mission of restoring baseball to poor schools and to neighborhoods. Congratulations to Cal. Congratulations to the effort, as well as Fields and Futures. Let's talk football, then we'll talk soccer. New Economic Impact Report claims that Super Bowl 52 at U.S. Bank Stadium in downtown Minneapolis brought in net new spending of $370 million to the Twin Cities. The Super Bowl celebration that lasted from January 26 to February 4 in Minnesota delivered on its promised economic impact, coming in at $50 million over pre-event projections. The $370 million can be largely attributed to the $179 million spent by broadcast and event planners, the most ever for a Super Bowl. The ultimate number reached after subtracting about $80 million for displaced tourism, people kept away by the event, which is a pretty good methodology. The number, still being disputed by a few parties, confirms that Minnesota, Minneapolis, and St. Paul specifically know how to host mega sporting events successfully and profitably, boding well for the 2019 Final Four, also being held at U.S. Bank Stadium. Well, there's more football news. It's philanthropic more than anything else. First, let's get to one more stadium effort. L.A. could find its way into the regular rotation of the Final Four hosts, much to the dismay of Phoenix. The Chargers and Rams' new stadium, expected to cost about $5 billion, becoming an attractive option for one of the country's biggest sporting events. All of them, maybe. Los Angeles, currently one of 7 cities, bidding to land a Final Four over a 4-year span. Phoenix, Dallas, Houston, San Antonio, Detroit, and Indy. There's interest in L.A., and as I've told the others, it's a math issue. There's a presumption that Indy will get one of those because of their NCAA arrangement, so it could be 6 for 3 years. This past Final Four in San Antonio delivered an economic impact of $185, and the 2017 rendition in Phoenix turned out an impressive $324.5 million. With the warm Los Angeles weather and the state of the stadium in the works, L.A. sits as a serious contender to land a Final Four in the near future. Finally, let's get into the philanthropic issue that we talked about before, and it relates to Aaron Rodgers. He received an honorary doctorate for humanities from the Medical College of Wisconsin. The honor given in recognition of his commitment of helping children with cancer through his work with the college and Midwest Athletics Against Childhood Cancer Fund. No public ceremony to recognize Rodgers. Great pride we welcome him to the MCW community. was said. Honorary degree recipients exemplify the MCW commitment. Rogers has helped raise more than $2.8 million in research and continues to make appearances on behalf of the fund. Kudos to Aaron Rodgers, obviously an incredibly charitable and incredibly philanthropic individual. Let's talk soccer as we end the podcast. Major issues this week heading into the World Cup. First, domestically, FC Cincinnati officially been unveiled as Major League Soccer's 26th franchise. The club begins play on the top-flight American Soccer League in 2019, marking a significant milestone for a franchise that only joined the USL in 2016 itself. 16 home games last season at Nippert Stadium. The team averaged an impressive 21,000 fans, while also beating two MLS clubs in the U.S. Open Cup in front of 30,000-plus fans. Putting that attendance figure into perspective, the 22 MLS teams in the league last year, only 7 had a higher attendance over the course of a season. 21,000-seat Soccer Pacific Stadium, currently planned to open in 2021, a capacity entirely based on the current club trajectory. FC Cincinnati paying $150 million of an expansion fee ahead of joining the league. By the way, that's a 15-fold increase from the $10 million Toronto FC paid to join the MLS just a decade ago. Let's go international. First, Shad Khan. He's spending nearly $1.1 or $1.2 billion to buy Wembley, and no outright opposition among FA councillors at a recent meeting to discuss the potential sale. English FA CEO Martin Glenn laid out an ambitious vision to the councillors were the sale to go through, $1.3 billion being put into grassroots soccer across the UK by 2030. Also, to ease the emotions of councillors and preserve the sanctity of the historic venue, Glenn confirmed that any new owner would have to agree to numerous projections until 2057, such as not selling naming rights for the stadium and ensuring the Royal Box remains in place. Receiving an offer to sell Wembley is not a betrayal, said Glenn. It's not selling the soul of the game. What we have in front of us is simply an opportunity. Expect Khan to prevail in the purchase, but don't expect him to be moving the Jaguars to London anytime soon. 2 more World Cup issues. First of all, the one that's right out ahead of us. Heavy scrutiny, obviously FIFA, economic impact, but how about Qatar? Many say that the Foundation of Sports Integrity's conclusion that Qatar's bid was completely illegitimate, it may be bearing fruit. One investigation confirmed mystery payments ahead of the 2010 vote was 3.6 million euros deposited into an Argentine FIFA executive Swiss bank account. Qatar also allegedly paid off a $50 million debt owned by the Argentine FA. Qatar beat out the U.S., South Korea, Japan, and Australia to become the smallest nation by area ever to be awarded a FIFA World Cup. And while bribery has long been alleged as the reason why, as evidence piles up, it is quickly morphing from whisper into a louder whisper. Finally, a decision about 2026, but it's made next week. According to Reuters, the joint bid between the U.S., Canada, and Mexico is working relentlessly to fend off Morocco, a feisty rival that poses a significant threat due to its African support base. And this is really important. Of the 211 total votes that will be cast by each country's FA, 54 come from Africa, Morocco's home. Because of that, both bids have made the African continent their primary focus over the past week or so, with the joint bid trying to steal a few African votes away from Morocco. Liberia already voiced its support for the North American bid. South Africa's government urged the FA to vote that way as well, citing its strained relations with Morocco. The North American bid poised to generate more than $5 billion in short-term economic activity, per a report from BCG, with individual cities expecting approximately $620 million, up from $160 million, somewhere in that range each, in incremental economic activity. While these numbers dwarf those more significant numbers than anything expected out of Morocco, FIFA has shown its new desire to factor in more than money when making these decisions. Whichever way the vote falls on June 13, expect continued debate and outcry about it to be part of the soundtrack of the imminent World Cup in Russia. Well, that's it for our show today. We'd like to thank Mike King and his spirit of volunteerism. We'd like to thank Tanner Simpkins and Dan Martin for helping to put this podcast together, NBC. And also, thank you guys for hanging in and listening to all of these issues as we get closer to the World Cup, the U.S. Open, and a variety of sports events. And join us next week as we go Beyond the Scoreboard.